So I'm waiting for my guest. It's an interesting discussion we're going to have about science and biohacking and fitness. And we have very, very, very important guests today that are joining us. It's going to be reading even for me to know their opinion. I'm going to introduce them very soon. Guys, I can't take you in my video because I already have 3 guests. So, but next time, if any of you guys wants to join me, hey Frank, what's up, bro? If any of you guys wants to join me, just DM me because I have a list of people that would like to be on the show every Wednesday, but I'm fully open to have any one of you guys. You're more than welcome. So waiting for my guest, today I have Vishal Gondal. Vishal is the guy that sold his company to Disney media company, and he's a fantastic entrepreneur. He's the founder of GoKey. He's gonna say, "Oh, is it on, brother?" I was talking about you. And I have Alex Nekritin, another successful entrepreneur, and he has a app that he's going to talk about new apps about biohacking. Let me see. Hello. Very wrong. Good morning. I'm trying. I think that the invitation just dropped, so I'm resending it. I'm so happy to have you here today. Did you had a night flight back? I saw on your post you were flying back from India to New York yesterday, huh?
So I was in New York back to India. So I got back on Sunday night. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's okay. So it's late now for you. No?
No, it's about 9:30 p.m. So not that bad.
Okay. I'm so glad that you joined. There's so many things that you're going to tell us because you're a fanatic of fitness, but you are a crazy biohacker and a more crazy successful entrepreneur. I want to know everything today.
So I think, clearly you have been also an inspiration. I've been following all the stuff you are doing, and I'm glad that the world is now talking about biohacking. And I think, it somehow sounds like this is what a bunch of nerds are doing. But in reality, there is a crying need for biohacking being more mainstream.
Yeah.
Because I think right now with the pandemic, everybody knows that medicines and doctors can't do much.
Yeah.
It's your own body and your own immune system.
Absolutely.
So
That's all right.
So it'll be really exciting to talk to you and talk about how time that we take control of the one machine we were born with, which is our body.
It's our body, and absolutely, or taking control of our own body and our mind. I think that people were too busy by the past to be able to do it. Okay, here are the 2 coming in, just sending back the invite. They were too busy to by their work and everything to pay attention to that. And there we go, Alex. Oh,
hey guys.
You have light behind you, so we can barely see you.
Let me turn around. I'm in a hotel room. I'm on a business trip right now. So
you said you're true. Yeah.
Hopefully the room is clean.
Hopefully, yeah. We're already starting about taking control of mind and body.
Of course.
So we're going to go back on that. I'm waiting for Dallas. Dallas should be in.
Just give me 1 second.
Yeah, take your time. It's good, Vishal, that you have. You're always on podcast. So anyway, you know how to manage that.
All right. Okay. How about that? Is that any better?
Yeah, it's way better. Where are you now?
In Jacksonville, Florida. Yeah, it's like 5 hours north of Miami. Yeah,
okay.
Heading back today.
Hey, what? Going on with Dallas, he seems like he can't join for some reason. Let me just go back. What the heck is going on with Dallas? I don't know why. Send me back a request, Dallas, because but there we go. See, just have to ask for it. It's coming in. There we go. All right. So we're ready. Thanks for joining, Dallas. Thanks for joining, Vishal. It's a great pleasure. Thanks for joining, Alex. It's a great pleasure. I'm going to start by introducing you guys to our audience. They're joining slowly but surely. Thanks, everyone, for joining as well. It's always a pleasure to get you, and I love the feedback that you're providing me on these live. So let's keep going on these ones. There we go. So I start with Vishal. Here, so it's on my right side or the left side if you look at the camera. So Vishal was born in India and is a successful entrepreneur. Is now as well an angel investor and is the co-founder. Is a founder and still a CEO of this fantastic application named GoKey that everyone knows. But Vishal was before he had a company as well that was in the gaming development and publishing company, and that company sold it to Walt Disney back in 2011. So, well, if you Google Vishal, you're going to have like pages and pages about him. But I'm just going to pinpoint one that I love is in 2019, you've been awarded as the Entrepreneur of the Year by Entrepreneur Magazine. This is tough. I'm probably missing many points in your life, because your life and your successes are so extended. But I'm going to give you in a minute the time to maybe go over a couple of other things that you want people to know about you. So I'm very happy to have you today at Vishal. Thank you so much. And you were traveling from New York yesterday, so you must be tired as well. Alex is here. I can barely go on his head like that.
Well, good luck. Good luck.
Alex is a serial entrepreneur. He's built and sold many and a lot of businesses, and is now the CEO. Is dedicating his time now to an application that is called UltiCell, and it's the first biohacking application. You're going to know more about that. So he's the founder of this application, and is since 2002 actually he's been a crazy biohacker, passionate about improving himself mentally and physically, and now he's trying actually to combine the success he had through business, so his knowledge in business, with the knowledge he has in biohacking, and the application comes from there. So according to Alex, UltiCell is the ultimate biohacking and self-improvement application and company. You're going to have Dallas disappeared. So I'm just going to pop up on Dallas, finish with that, but he's probably going to show up again. He has a very weak connection, I think, on internet. Every time we are on conference, he drops. So I expect things to come back, otherwise we'll keep going. Dallas is the co-founder and editor-in-chief of Biohackers Magazine, Biohackers Update, and you may know that I acquired this magazine early in 2021. I jumped with the team, so I'm part of them to help them to organize the magazine in a way that we join the community of science and the community of biohackers, and as Vishal was saying before, get people to know more about biohacking, and because biohacking is something that it's simple, but it looks complicated and sometimes crazy to some other people. So that's the goal of Biohackers Update, to make people understand that biohacking is fantastic and it has to be known and applied. Let me just see if I can get an invite back to Biohackers. There we go. I send it back. And in the meantime, Vishal, I invite you to start and maybe talk a bit about what you do. You travel. You're always traveling. So what else should we know about you?
I think, the most pertinent thing about me, and which has got me in this world of biohacking, is I started off as a computer geek and computer programmer when I was a kid. I started programming computers when I was 13 or 14, and my first computer actually was which used the Z80 processor. It was called the Sinclair ZX Spectrum. And so I've been involved, and then of course I got into game development. So I've been always involved in even when it came to, gaming is considered as the cutting edge when it comes to technology, right? All the innovation first happens in computer games, and then comes into products and a lot of features. For example, what we are seeing on Instagram and Facebook, if you use a platform called Discord, you will imagine it is basically right now that is the hottest communication app because it is based for gamers.
Right.
So I started with and when I was growing up, there was no internet.
Hold on, Vishal. I think that we have a problem. People can't hear. Apparently, guys, you're listening. Can you hear us? I can hear you very clearly, but seems like some people are saying that they don't hear anything.
I can hear you guys.
Yeah.
I think maybe a problem at their end. Yeah.
And there, yeah.
From the audience, can you just wave to see if to tell me? I can ask somebody here too. Yes, we can. Okay, perfect. Sorry for interrupting you. Okay, thank you guys for saying that. Okay, please keep going. Then I don't know what happened there.
So like I was saying, that this is the time when there was no internet. So the only way to learn was self-experimenting. So I started self-experimenting with computers. I was part of the hacking community, and when I used to do assembly programming. So assembly is where when you are doing low-level programming. And I'm now talking about the late 90s. I'm not even talking about year 2000. I'm talking.
You mean that you're an old man?
So actually, I was 16. I was 16 or 17 that time. So I think in the whole idea of tinkering and going in depth and going into, let me use the word, the assembly language of anything is what is my inherent nature. And by the way, when I was a kid, I was a national volleyball player. I was extremely athletic and healthy. But when I was building a games company, my diet became largely pizza and Pepsi. And within no time, I was almost 120 kgs. I was pre-diabetic. And, while I built a successful gaming company, I had completely screwed up my own health. And that is when I decided that, hey, I need to do something about my own health. And I started experimenting with my own health. And then something interesting happened, that when we sold the company to Disney, I was put a condition by Disney that I can't do gaming. I had a non-compete that I can't do the gaming business for 5 years. So then it was about how can I use gaming in somewhere else, and that's when I realized that the healthcare world is dying for innovation. Currently, traditionally, healthcare is dominated by what I call provider-centric businesses. Either you're making products for doctors or hospitals or insurance companies or pharma companies, right? Nobody's thinking about patient as we call the patient.
Oh, true. Numbers, yes. So you mean what you say globally is that it's controlled by pharmaceutical industry in general, selling products to others. Yeah.
And even the products which are built thinking of the pharma company and the medical company in mind, not the consumer in mind.
Right, it's true. That's our society. I agree.
So I think my idea really was that how can we build a platform which combines gaming and health? And the minute you combine gaming and health, it becomes a game of life. So the way Goki is built out, and we will talk a little bit about it.
Yeah.
In the world of Goki, it's about how do we help you become better, or how do you level up in this game of life? And how do you level up in this game of life, and how do you attain longevity? So if Goki, if life is a game.
Yeah.
If life is a game, unfortunately, you can't have 20 lives. In this world, you only have one life. So if you have to take the game world, the gaming world, and it is called, can you get God mode? In God mode, you don't die. So of course, there is no God mode either. Yet, it's not God mode yet. I'm not.
Not that we know. Yeah.
Not yet. But I think the closest you could go to winning the game of life is to live longer and healthier.
Absolutely.
And so I think what I'm really trying to do is creating that environment of gamification. So for example, a simple thing that any consumer of Goki is what called a patient or a user. We call them a player because we're all playing the game.
Okay.
When you become a part of Goki, you are a player. And as a player, you are supposed to play. And as a player, you are supposed to level up.
So you play you play your life, actually. You play the game of life. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
And level up. And the best part of leveling up is only biohacking gives you the tools to level up in your life. And and the kind of framework we have, and the interesting thing is, I've been also, I have the fortune of being in India, where we are very close to great thinkers in Ayurveda, in meditation.
Right.
As you know, India is the birthplace of many of these things.
Yeah, ancestral biohack.
And it is very interesting that what we are talking of biohack, a lot of this is actually already part of tradition. Thousands of years old in India.
Yeah.
So what we are just discovering, intermittent fasting is what has been happening in India for thousands of years.
It's true.
And so what has now just happened is that the same concepts are getting repackaged and presented. And it is important to repackage them, right? That's how humans are. We always like to, not believe what we don't know, but suddenly if it is packaged, like curcumin is the new everybody wants turmeric everywhere. So I think it's interesting, and we will talk about it. But I think I'm really excited to have this conversation, because what I believe is that once what is done by hackers becomes tomorrow's mainstream technology in the technology world.
100% in agreement with you on that. Actually,
today what we are talking is biohacking. What I believe is tomorrow is going to become mainstream healthcare.
Right.
What we are talking today in this little Instagram live is what maybe tomorrow thousands of doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals will be telling people. So that is what I'm excited about.
Yeah, absolutely.
We are on the cutting edge of health.
Absolutely, I agree. Thank you so much. That was like so passionate. You live for that. We can feel it from here. It's awesome. We're gonna go back to what you just said in a minute, because that's exactly the topic of our discussion. Alex, please go ahead. You have anything to add to about you and what you do, so we can jump in the topics after, please.
I agree so much with just about with everything that Vishal said. To even add to a couple of things is like, especially in the States, medicine is basically, it's emergency care. It's not healthcare. Like you don't really get too much from your doctor in terms of how to make your best self, how to perform optimally, how to live longer. Doctors are really good here if what hits the fan. If things get really bad, it's very good in the US.
True.
But
true.
In order for preventative stuff, and it has to do with drug companies, because I'll give you an example, like metformin, right? So metformin, there have been some research about it, how it's a diabetic drug, right? There's been research about metformin that in some cases it reduces, in animal studies, it's shown to reduce cancer rates. It's better for the heart, right? Some studies of that as well, and also longevity. And like there was some examples where people who had diabetes, right, who took metformin, and they actually outlived people that didn't have diabetes, right? But when I actually mentioned it that to a doctor, and metformin is very cheap, so there is no big mainstream study on metformin. So it's not like a doctor's going to tell you. I mean, I'm getting to that age. I recently turned 40. I already want to get into this longevity and stuff like that. Whatever technology and drugs there is, longevity.
True. Wow.
And like metformin, just because it's cheap, there's no studies about it. So biohacking is an absolute necessity. You know what I mean? Like, and I totally agree with Vishal that eventually and that's something, my big vision. Obviously, we right now have the app for biohacking, but my big, huge vision is to change the healthcare industry, to have it be wellness care. So people, that's my 10-year plan. I think really big, or 5 or 10 year plan to change that industry so it's more preventative. So people can do it. That's something that you can do with our app as well. Our app has a database of healthy habits and activities, and it allows you to track those and test those and then test the results. So it allows you to do some of that self-experimentation, but it does it in a systematic way, also with gamification, by the way. So it would be very cool for people to use this app to study, to see what works for them, and eventually change it so it's more preventative.
Okay, thank you. So very interesting. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. Dallas, what's your vision about biohacking and the future of biohacking? So we're pretty much aligned on the same direction for everyone. And how do you see that? How do you see biohacking in the future?
Yeah. First of all, I just want to say it's a pleasure to meet both you guys. I've been following you guys with great interest, and I think it's a really cool concept to take gaming, which is overtaking the world in a negative way in some respects, addiction, right? And you're taking this addiction, this void, and putting healthy habits into it, which is such a cool concept, kind of using it in a way to combat all of the things that are negatively associated with gaming. But it's such a cool concept to take something that's so addicting, make it into something that can be addictive, healthy habit almost, Though I think that's very cool. Props to you guys. My vision of biohacking is a lot of the same lines of what you guys were saying, but basically we live in the information age, right? There's so much information out there. And if you're not careful, you can find information that can lead you down some dark rabbit holes. And maybe that some of those are good, but a lot of times we get so saturated with information that we don't know what to do. We don't know what to choose. We don't know what to believe, right?
True.
I think part of what we're trying to do at Biohackers Magazine is just put good information out there, promote wellness, health optimization, help people become the better version of themselves. whether it's through personal development, through biohacks, through, complete rehauls of their regimen. We want to put information out there in the world and make it in one easy to find resource so that people don't have to jump all over the internet, jump through books, and put it in a really nice, easy to read way that also connects the biohacking community together.
Okay, thank you for that, Dallas. I'm just going to remove, there is a hacker putting spam, so I just blocked in. It's always like that. And you know what, Vishal? Most of the hackers I found popping in discussion like that are coming from the gaming community often. They just play around to us. But that's sometimes funny, sometimes it's not. So I love it.
Correct, yeah.
I wonder if they're biohackers too.
They're just hackers. Anyway, I do agree. The optimization of the body and the mind at the end of the day has one goal, and it's like longevity for everyone. It's not just being better in a better world, in a better mind, in a better body, but it's longevity. Longevity goes to one point. It's related to science, and it's fully related to actually 2 points, mitochondria and epigenetics. Those are the two scientific points that contribute to our longevity. They can be taken on one side or the other, but at the end of the day, we all go back to that scientific evidence. So Dave Asprey was the first to raise the hands and say, I'm a biohacker. He said that it's the art and science of changing the environment around you and inside you to have full control over your own biology. So what is biohacking for you guys? I think that the definition of Dave was great, but what is the definition of biohacking in general? And then just one or two examples to back up what you are saying would help our community to understand how we see biohacking. Vishal,
So, I think while Dave has really been the flag bearer of biohacking in the world, I don't know if you remember, there was the quantified self community, the QS community, and there was a lot of things around QS. I think that movement right now has kind of slowed down, but I have been actually part of the quantified self community for some time now. And I think for me, biohacking is less about biology or doing something to your body, more about hacking your way to, and in this case success is defined as becoming healthier. And I think the problem right now is the reason we are calling it a hack, and in the gaming world when you talk about hack, is because a hack gives you an unfair advantage over people who don't know these. So I think that's exactly why, in gaming, we started with Easter eggs, and, people are always trying to use cheat codes in games. So I would say that biohacking is the ability for you to become better, or you to progress in health, in life, in anything you are doing. Using some amazing tips and tricks and, amazing technology.
And what kind of, for example, one example on that, one trick?
So again, like I said, so for me, biohacking is not just the body. I think a lot of people, the minute you use the word biohack, people think of it as your body.
True.
I think the biohacking works at different levels. And so there is the biohacking of your body, which is the physical body, or whether it is nutrition, whether it is exercise. But I would say the bigger biohacks and things which are more effective is how you can biohack your mind and how you can biohack even your soul. How can you go to that level? And in my opinion, what I try to focus more on is not the bodily bio. I mean, while we start with all of that, I think the larger hacks are around the mind. And
Absolutely.
And if there is one hack which I want to give anybody, and there is no science behind it, is start meditating, even 20 minutes a day. It sounds very underrated, and I think the ability to just not have thought for 20 minutes a day itself gives you a superpower to go and do anything in your life. So I would say, if you ask me my favorite one hack, and I would call it a hack because not many people are doing it, it is about mindfulness and meditation.
Yeah, and it's fantastic because this is great what you said, because actually mindfulness meditation is one of the one of the biohack the most studied by research, And biohacker were the first to talk about mindfulness meditation and meditation as a biohack. And then Mayo Clinic in particular ran many studies showing that all the improvement in the body were starting from meditation. So when you say 20 minutes meditation per day per person would be already a great improvement, I do agree on that. And even 5 minutes, if you can do it 5 minutes, it's already something better for your mind. So in agreement with that. And that's probably the best biohack ever. And it's an ancestral biohack as well, as you said before. It's not even coming from us inventing something. It exists for many, many years. And fantastic. Thanks, Vishal. Alex, your point?
And I agree with everything Vishal is saying. I'll take it like this, maybe to phrase it a little bit slightly differently, is I feel like biohacking is living up to your true potential, both in terms of how long you live and how you live, how you're able to perform. So performing up to your true potential. And for me, and this is one thing that, there's a few things that I kind of paradigm shifts that I got when we started making the app. And one of them is I almost feel like biohacking and self-development is one and the same. And that's kind of what Vishal said in terms of body and mind, because you typically see what's traditional, like you have the self-development industry, the self-help, and you almost think of guys like Brian Tracy, Tony Robbins, stuff like that. And they all talk about mind, right? They all talk about different things you could do for your mind. And then you got the Dave Asprey's of the world. And then people think that biohacking is all about taking different supplements, nootropics, and things like that. And I feel like it has to be a holistic approach, right? So it has to be like, for example, in our app, we have this habit directory, right? And basically in the habit directory, we have activities which include changes you can make to your diet, physical exercise, mental exercise, and changes you can even make to your environment. I mean, I think those are the big three. It's your mental activities, your diet, and your environment. Give you some examples. Yeah, like if you have the best mental training and the most positive thinking in the world, but you're like, say, I'm doing an extreme example, so you're drunk the whole time, right? You're not gonna. Yeah, you're not gonna have.
How do you know it's true?
Had a couple times in college. Cheers.
That's it.
Right? But you're not really gonna have.
Well, I'm drinking water in a copper vessel, which is the biohack, by the way.
Oh, interesting.
Very cool. So yes, that's the big thing. You got to pay attention to everything comprehensively to live up to your potential. And then I got to give credit in terms of my favorite biohacks. I'm going to credit Optimize Me, Brian Johnson. I don't know if you guys follow, but he's got the one he calls the fundamentals. So instead of giving one, it's like eat, move, sleep. Those are, he calls the fundamentals. So get at least your 6 hours.
It's true.
Get outside and move, and hydrate enough. Like when under eat, you put hydrate. So you get those basics. If those things are off, we struggle. But Alice, you're going to jump into that in a minute. I just want to make a comment on that. But this is not different from traditional medicine in general. We're calling it biohacking, but it seems to be pretty much the same as traditional medicine recommendation: to eat, go outside, eat well. That's the foundation.
Yeah,
you gotta build on that, of course. But it's funny how many people actually neglect with, and that's the other big thing. Like something that our app has is we have push notification reminders and we have text reminders. So big thing of our app, like one of our testimonials for the app was, for example, it said it's like having a mentor in your pocket, right? Because so many people, they measure all these things and they're wearing their Oura rings or their Apple Watches. I know people like that. They all have those, their Fitbits, but then they go and they eat like crap. They don't take the time to exercise every day. They don't drink enough water. They don't eat healthy. So getting those fundamentals, of course, you got to build on that. I mean, we all want to transcend that, but that's the foundation. You got to, as I said, one thing for me, like I want to get those, because without those, I can't really.
Okay, thank you. Darius?
Yeah, that's so true. What you were just saying, Alex, and also Vishal, I think what you were saying about the foundation is really important too, because it's almost like a slow building process, right? We have to capitalize on those foundation building techniques, because if we focus all of our energy into working out, for example, we just work out. That's all we do. But we don't take care of our sleep. We don't eat right, or we don't take care of we don't spend time with our family or whatever. Other areas of our life are going to suffer, even though we're going up here. So it's
right.
Got a balance, right? We have to have a certain type of balance. Maybe the growth is a little slower, but it's more sustainable, right? So we're going to stay more sustainable. And I think biohacking and sustainability have a direct relationship with each other in terms of when we biohack, we're taking all these hacks, but we're doing little adjustments and discovering how to become a better version of ourselves that we're meant to be, that we've been created to, that we have the potential to be, like Alex was saying. And I liked what Vishal said about how it's not just body. Body is a great place to start with. It's one of the most obvious parts. And then, it starts in the mind. But we developed at Biohackers Update, kind of made these 3 different categories of biohacks, where it would be on the face value, you're looking at the outer side, right? More of the physical biohacks like eating, sleeping, the foundation. And then we move in more inside the body to the inner side of the biohack, more dealing with the mind and the nervous system and stuff like that. And then eventually we reach the core, where we're talking more about the spirit and how that power of meditation.
That's what Vishal was saying. Yeah.
Throughout every day, wake up in the morning. One of my favorite biohacks, just say, hey, thank you for another day. Thank you for another day to try and be my best version of myself and give me another opportunity to improve, That just starts the day off so right for me. So I think giving thanks and meditation and really those biohacks connect with spirit to help this better person.
Yes.
Or my
So adding spiritual. So going back to the topics we were saying, is just like we're talking biohacking, which is actually implementation of medicine, traditional medicine. We're adding the spiritual topic to that gives the biohack. Now the scientific community comes back to us and to biohackers in general and say, you can't biohack your body. It's impossible because the body is not biohackable. Your body is made to function. So I want to bring back both community and make understand that it's just the optimization, like Vishal, you were saying that, and your application is right into that because it's based on health and doctors and stuff like that. But I want the scientific community to add there and to understand that the biohacking, the way we say it, is just human optimization in general and implementing health, medicine, research, and natural and spiritual stuff together to make the whole concept of biohacking something livable and something for human improvement. So Vishal, that brings us to where you started, and we switch to the presentation. So you can go back to where you stopped before. It was just like picking up and so interesting. Please.
So I think, one of the most interesting things I learned about biohacking is actually by reading a very, very old book. And this book actually, I encourage, it's not a religious text. It's called the Bhagavad Gita, which is, one of the oldest scriptures, which talks about, so think of it like if you were born with a manual, this would be the one book given, if that is your life lesson. So think of it like that. And when I was reading it, and this is written thousands of years old, right? And it actually talks about nutrition. It actually talks about how do you live better and how do you take decisions in life. And there were 3 things which was really important. And I thought, as biohackers, we do this intuitively, but I think people don't realize it. And the first and the most important thing is the power of intention. I think having a good intention and positive intention is extremely important in life. And when I look at biohacking, I look at it from a positive perspective. We are not trying to biohack our body to become superhumans and, suddenly
put a chip in your head. Yeah.
I think having the intention of doing good to the society, doing good for people is the starting point of biohacking. And somehow, a lot of times, biohacking goes into the thing that these are these rich billionaires who don't want to die and who are injecting blood in their body. And, there's a lot of
baby blood. It's even worse. It's baby blood. Yeah.
Yeah, baby blood. And I was also hearing about people drinking infant milk, breast milk, and all kinds of crazy things, right? So, I mean, the point really over here is that I think for me, biohacking, the intention is pure. We are not doing this with an intention of selling somebody a product or telling you that,
I like that.
Finally you can biohack by buying this. That is not. There is no product or solution for this. The product and solution is you yourself. The second thing is awareness. There's another very interesting concept of awareness, and I'll give you a good example, right? Think about us having all a cup of, and accidentally there is a fly which falls in that cup of, and we are not aware of it. So we'll all drink the tea. It's quite obvious, and we don't know.
Yeah.
And nothing is going to happen. Nothing is going to happen. But the minute you see that fly in your tea, there is no way you are able to drink that, So what changed was not the fact that there was a fly in the cup, but it was the awareness. And I think that's exactly what is happening in the world right now. People are being their awareness around this is so low because there are so many distractions. And these distractions are happening because of interests who have conflict with your goal. So let's say your and my goal is to become healthier, but then there is Facebook and Instagram who is wanting to, make you click on ads. By the way, I don't know if you know, but Netflix CEO has gone on record to say Netflix's competition is sleep. And imagine.
That was an excellent. Wow.
Sleep is the most important thing. As a biohacker, I tell everybody sleep is the number one important thing for you. But guess what? Netflix is putting billions of dollars so that people don't sleep. While we are trying our level best to make them sleep and become healthy and aware of sleep. They are all wanting to, not sleep and see one more episode of their Narcos or some other binge watch another show. Because whether it is Netflix or Amazon or Hulu or all these platforms don't want you to sleep because they make billions out of you not sleeping. Similarly, there are platforms which are designed to sell you junk food, all the food deliveries and, the Grabs and all the food apps in India. They are constantly giving you deals to get pizza and burgers.
Same North American tradition.
So the point is that at one end, you are trying to make your health goal and you are trying to do everything right for your health. But there are all these companies and corporations whose goal is in direct conflict with what your personal goals are. And all of us are falling prey to it. I always make a point for people to be aware that, listen, I'm not saying nothing is wrong in binge watching a Netflix show, but be aware that Netflix is doing this because they don't want you to get a better. And nothing is going to happen if you don't watch it tonight and watch the show tomorrow. So I think being aware is very important. And the third part is we need to be a learner. You need to have a learner's mindset. And I think that's my challenge with a lot of the people in the scientific community, that we are all trying to learn and experiment. And experiments by definition is something which is going to fail or succeed. Only when you experiment. Right? So when we are experimenting, and in this case we are experimenting with ourselves, this again becomes conflict of interest because people are again making, for example, as we know, there is such a huge business of supplements. All kinds of supplements are being sold.
In North America, it's biohacking, it's selling supplements.
Exactly, right? So the final thing is that they give you a biohack and then they will say, by the way, this is the stack, this is your supplement stack to buy. So I think the problem right now is that biohacking does not really mean that you need to buy a particular brand of coffee or eat a particular brand of butter.
Or put them together.
It is not about, it's a theory, right? It's a way of living. And which is why, for example, something like keto, I don't consider keto as a biohack because it is not a sustainable way to do.
Absolutely.
So I think according to me, biohacking is also something important, but something which you can do for your life.
Exactly. Something to implement. But that's an interesting point. What about fasting then?
Fasting you can do for your life. That's the whole point. And, like I said, there is in India, there is a religion which is called Jainism. And you should, search about Jainism.
It's true.
In that religion, you basically have to eat dinner before sunset. And then you can only eat something next day after sunrise. So, and this is what is followed by millions of people already.
Makes sense.
If you actually count that is intermittent fasting. And so many times, for example, in India, there are days where you do 24-hour fast, once a week. It's already coded in a lot of the religions. I mean, the season of Ramadan has just started yesterday. What is that, right? That is also a kind of 30-day fasting. So I think it's interesting to see that almost every religion has incorporated fasting and mindfulness within its code itself. Whether you are fasting in Lent or I love the Jewish, how they have the Sabbath. Detoxification from technology. When we talk about don't use tech, they actually have a day once every week.
Friday night.
So I think it is very interesting that, we are actually going to the past is because I think they already knew it. The problem was longevity was getting impacted because of diseases like smallpox, cholera, communicable diseases, and war.
Yeah.
The reason of death, if you see in the 19th and 20th century, was not diabetes and
No. It's today's
not the big
problem. Yeah.
Today, what has happened is we as humanity have actually figured out a way to survive all the communicable diseases. Of course, coronavirus is one, and I'm confident we will get through that too. The reality is we are now dying of things which are completely avoidable, reversible, manageable.
Sure.
And the reason that is happening is because there is billions of dollars of profit being made because of it. I'm absolutely, I'm not afraid to say this. The biggest scam in the world is type 2 diabetes. There is no reason why people should have type 2 diabetes.
It was a standard. It was actually the type 2 diabetes was almost created by pharmaceutical companies. They reduced the standard for being diagnosed as a type 2 diabetes sickness and provide more. It's the same. I'm not in the law of the conspiracy theory, but you are right on that one. Type 2 diabetes.
I'm just talking about common sense. Sense that you are reducing. If you reduce your carbohydrate intake, increase your physical activity, have low glycemic index food, there is just absolutely no way that your body is going to have high sugar. I mean, it's common sense. But the problem is that everybody is going to tell you, have metformin, have insulin, do this, do that, eat, diabetic food, but nobody is going to tell you this, which is kind of surprising.
True. So right. What do you guys think? It's fascinating. You're right, Ray. It's like that way, and our society is made this way. We go against the natural, and as soon we actually take natural paths to be better, we are submerged by money maker, which is normal because we're a capitalist world by money makers. Trying to put us on the opposite direction 100%. So you guys are here to make others improve their life, and you have tools for that, and you have this Goki application that it's right for that. Alex, you have yourself that is in the same direction, and maybe you want to add something on these topics.
Absolutely. First, what you said originally, how could anyone, it's crazy to me, how could anyone say that biohacking is not a real thing? But I mean, because if you look at the very, very basics, like filtering water, that's biohacking in a way. It's just basically knowing yourself and your environment, and adjusting that environment to perform at your best. And by that I mean in every which way, mentally and physically. That's my definition of biohacking. You go to basic things like filtering your water, that's biohacking.
You can extend biohacking to everything you do, actually.
Brushing your teeth, that's biohacking, right?
And if you do it with the opposite ends, it's even better biohacking because you trigger neuroplasticity in your brain. So
right.
Yeah.
So I want to say that, like, it's crazy to say that it's not a thing, right? But now, obviously, as technology advances, it should advance to the next levels. We have a big paradigm. I mean, like antibiotics. Obviously, people say there's bad things about antibiotics, but antibiotics are for people's survival. Back then, infectious diseases could kill you because there was no antibiotics.
If Pasteur didn't exist, we would probably all be dead by now. Antibiotics are necessary. Of course, the abuse is not necessary.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's a biohack, and that's an essential biohack. If you got a terrible infectious disease, take antibiotics. Now, I feel like as technology advances, there is going to be more. As technology advances, hopefully at an accelerated rate, right? There should be more biohacks that are going to come about and help us become the best versions of ourselves and perform up to our potential. Another thing that I want to say, and maybe I'll add a little controversy to this to this IG life to make it interesting. And don't kick me out after I say that.
Let me get ready.
Don't get you out. Let's make that part of it. I feel like I'll start with this. I'll start that obviously we're all different, and this is something that our app does is it basically tracks how each of those habits affect you. We have an AI component in UltiSelf that basically tracks how each of your habits and activities affect you. And, I feel like it's going to go there a little bit rather than being general. Hey, I'll give you a simple one. Bullet coffee. I actually love bullet coffee. It gives me really great focus energy. Problem is I got a sensitive stomach. So if I do bullet coffee too often, the MCT oil and the coffee itself, like I can't have coffee often. It's not going to be, it's not going to work for me. For somebody else, like John, you mentioned, you drink coffee twice a day, and you love it. So we are all different.
And that's chocolate. That's chocolate too.
That chocolate.
That's chocolate, right?
That's important. That's an important one.
See, that's another one that I has really good effects on me, but then the stomach, it's kind of hard because it's acidic. So we're all different, and actually finding the right biohacks that individualized programs for us is very important. I feel like medicine or biohack enable us to find individualized things for us, right? And that's a big paradigm shift. Now, here's my controversial example: meditation, which everybody says.
Okay, go ahead.
Don't put your hands behind your back so you don't kick me out. But there are studies, and we actually did a little bit of a study analysis. There are studies that for some people that is something that as widely right now considered great as meditation actually may have adverse effects. So that's a perfect example of how
Who published that? Where did you find this information? I'm very curious.
I don't have it off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I will send it. A percentage of people may have adverse effects with certain types of meditation. Like, for example,
And this was sponsored by the people making antidepressant lessons.
Look, I wanted to add some controversy.
See, we are just also adding to the controversy.
I like that. Yeah.
I'm not saying that I do breath work every day, which I guess is a form of meditation. But that's just an example of how we are also different, and different things affect us in a different way. And with technology advancing, people will have the power in their hand to find out what works for them, what supplements work. Because that's another thing, like you guys mentioned supplements, and in my opinion, all these supplements have minor side effects.
Yeah, and many supplements, so many supplements are not even tested in the proper way. And like you said, Vishal, they pay companies to make publication, and those publications are just not reliable. Today, there is so much polemics about everything. You can be afraid about light, you can be afraid about plastic, you can be afraid about textile, whatsoever. And there is publication that will back up everything that I'm just said it's just stupid, but it's backed up by publication. It's just like we have to pinpoint the right publication by the right people. It's too easy. I really look forward to see that publication.
The best example I give people is that in this world where there are too many sensors coming in on your devices, on your app, the biggest sensor which is missing is common sense. I think most people lack common sense. So I think that's the way,
Then how
why
they feel
being
in tune with their bodies, being in tune with their
Exactly,
bodies
right?
is your ultimate sense.
So for example, I'm sure somebody will come with a scientific paper that breathing leads to death, because every time you're breathing, you are living, and ultimately you're going to die. So,
Sure.
if you can just stop breathing, you may not die. So I'm just saying that, a lot of these things, meditation is just breathing and, keeping your eyes closed. If that can have adverse effects, then it is not the meditation which is wrong. There is something else which people need to worry about, right? So I think that's the whole challenge, right? There is so much of conflict of interest in this world of healthcare and nutrition and supplements. And which is why I go back to the point that people need to look at common sense, because if something doesn't make sense, then you should question it, because there's a lot of crap. There's a lot of crap in the name of biohacking out there. And which and that's what I tell people, right? The biggest biohack is start using your common sense.
And for society lacks common sense. How do we? I don't want to go too philosophical on that, but if we lack common sense, who's gonna tell us what is common sense, and how can we find ourselves that common sense is the right common sense? It's difficult to get there because many people don't know what should be good, and that makes sense for us because it's natural. How we get there? I don't want to go too philosophical in this discussion, but how would you tell someone that what he's doing is following his common sense or your common sense more than others' common sense? The people who put the differential. Yeah.
You want me to take this one? So, and this is something like one thing we put in our app is you guys obviously know what a chronotype is, right? So There's a great book. I think it's called The Power of When. So some people are, again, this is controversial. Like, I don't wake up early.
What publication is next?
I don't wake up early, and I try. Every time I try waking up early, I perform like crap. I'm a night. My brain turns on between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. That's when I'm on fire. In the mornings, I'm horrible. And you want to find your chronotype. So basically, are you a night person? Are you a morning person? And everybody's different. So, there's a lot of gadgets that track your sleep, and they give you your numbers, like your heart rate variability and stuff like that, right? What we put in our app, for example, is the chronotype sleep tracker. So all we do, a component of our app is you take 1 second to rate your day from 1 through 5, right? And then you put it, the app tracks your wake up time and your bed. Basically, the point of this is that it's able to identify what wake up time and bedtime allows you to perform at your best. And
but allow me to jump into that. Perform at your best, and this is neuroscience backed. To perform at your best, you need to be exposed to light to trigger certain neurotransmitter and hormones to make your sleep better and your wakeness better. So the concept of a night person or a day person for me doesn't stand too much, to be honest, because we all need a certain time of light exposure during the day. And this is what triggers the fact that 16 hours later maximum, you're going to fall asleep because of what is happening in your body.
It's within reason, like in that stuff. It's not like staying up till 4 a.m. Staying up till 3 a.m. is crazy.
Yeah.
But some people are like staying up till 1 or 2. I mean, you're still getting up at 8 or 9. You're still okay. I mean, it's better early, but
the light stimulation that you're going to get at 10 a.m. is not the same light stimulation you can get at 7. Yeah, and it doesn't have the same effect on one molecule, serotonin.
Agreed.
And it's important for everything. It's one of the most important in our body.
So, I mean, within a certain reason, there's people that perform better at night, and then there's people that perform better in the morning. We can agree with that, right? Unless it's an extreme, right? Yeah. So, what I was getting with all that is the feel. It's in addition to like that biometric indicators, how you feel is a judgment, and being in tune with how you feel,
that's common sense.
And correlating, that's what I mean by common sense. You see what I'm getting at? Because people, and that's right now we are going to integrate with our app with biometric devices. But right now our app is, that's our biggest output, I guess. Or like our input is the habits that you do, and we correlate that with your daily self-assessment. So that self-assessment needs to be tracked and measured.
So Vishal, what you are calling common sense is actually the way that you feel the best.
So I have a slight disagreement here, right? See, a lot of times people correlate a health activity or something which says, this is what works for me. But at the same time, there is knowledge and then there is wisdom, correct? Knowledge is what works for me, but what is the right wisdom? So what you just mentioned was the wisdom of the daylight, etc. So a lot of times, and this feeling that I am doing better is actually a lot of times not correct, because a human body and human mind is always deceiving you, right? And that it is designed to do that, because for example, we all know we are going to die, and if our mind is constantly thinking of death, we would not do anything else, right? Because if our mind is constantly reminding us of that, because our mind has these neural pathways of building stories and your ego and all of these gives you reasons on why you do something. So people have justification for everything they are doing. So that's what I have found.
Yeah.
Everything. Somebody says, I just have one peg of whiskey and I sleep really well. Somebody says, without a smoke, I can't go to have crap. So all kinds of things I have heard, and and this is my performance. People are like, I wake up and I have to smoke and I'll give myself 10 out of 10. But we know that is not good for you. I mean, that's wisdom.
Yeah.
So I think, and here is where, and I don't know what we can do, and maybe this is a suggestion for you, right? I think the problem is the word hack. It has a very negative connotation in today's world. We keep hearing that my Facebook account is hacked, my bank account is hacked, somebody has, hacked my this thing and asking for ransomware. So I think because of the negative connotation around the word hack, the minute you talk about biohacking, it puts it, and even the medical community is like, this is something, the name itself has a negative connotation. So we need to figure out a way to call it a bio enhancement. It is almost, it is like, I don't know if you know, there is a very interesting MIT lab, which is building all these enhancements for people with disabilities. They are able to have artificial limbs and all kinds of things, right? So they call it, enhancing our. So I'm just saying that there needs to be a larger or a reinvention of how we present what we are doing.
What we're doing. I so agree on that. I so agree. Yeah.
Because we are all nerds and we love hacking. But an average person considers hacking as something really bad, and they keep getting reminded that don't get hacked.
That's it.
People are like, oh God, this is something which is bad.
Yeah, it's bad, and it's like a bandit attitude. And you are so right. That's what I was saying right at the beginning, when the scientific community say you cannot hack your body, and you can optimize it, you can make it better. But you cannot hack it. Our cells are not made to be hacked.
I mean, in fact, the most amazing hack which has just happened is the mRNA vaccine, right? It's literally inserting a code in your body and hacking it. I mean, that's actually a hack.
Yeah, that's
which is happening to that's the hack.
Yeah,
but nobody's worried about that. But when we tell them to meditate and have a good night's sleep, everybody is questioning the science behind it.
It's true. It's because science tried to back up whatever acts that we're trying to do, like antibiotics or mRNA or cancer treatment and stuff like that. So there is science behind it. Until a couple of decades, was no science behind meditation. Neuroscience it's not an old science. It's a science that has 20 years, 25 years. And fortunately, neuroscience was born because now we have a bridge between psychology, psychiatry, and science, like medical stuff. Let's put it back where it was. At the beginning, you had people looking at your mind and trying to analyze what you think, what you do, and how you behave. That was called psychology and psychiatry. And on the other side, you had medical doctors looking at you through x-rays or blood sample and stuff like that, and taking a map of what you were doing, if you were doing it right or not. Now, neuroscience bridged together, both of them, and in the middle of everything jumps biohackers using exactly the same principle, balancing both. So I do agree that hack is a wrong word. I do agree that most of the biohack are backed up by science, and matter of fact, science doesn't understand what biohackers are trying to do, and we probably should rebrand it in another way and try to put the community in front of what they're expecting from us as improvement. Yeah.
Self-optimization.
Self-optimization. I think that it was the keyword of Ben Greenfield. Self-optimization was the first to say that is launching some human self-optimization program, but it's still selling supplement every day. I have a lot of respect, except for the supplement market. It's like, in North America, this is it. Biohacking means take pills. I've seen people taking like over 125 pills in one day. It's just like make no sense.
125 pills. And that is why then here I want to, add both traditional Indian medicine and Chinese medicine.
The
fundamental of these medicine is that food is medicine.
Yeah.
So when you are doing Ayurveda, their diet, their medicine treatment is about what kind of foods you are going to eat, what foods are going to have an impact on you, because that is your primary source. And I think that's really what needs to go back, right? This whole concept of a pill. People want to get a pill for every problem in their life.
Exactly. They want this fixed right now.
Quick
fix. Yeah. True.
And I think that's really, and I think that's this whole world of instant gratification, right? You hear a biohack and you get a pill and you eat it, and wow, you have hacked yourself.
Yeah.
Right? So
and you feel like
I think. So I think this whole world of instant gratification is the challenge, and somehow we need to start figuring out how can we give the fact that something which is happening slowly is also good.
it's even better.
Everything in nature takes slow, and whenever you have tried to accelerate it by putting fertilizers or anything else, we have seen the adverse effects of trying to make things faster. And I think
so true. Cancers. It's exactly this. It's surmultiplication of cells in a erratic way that it's too fast. 100% on top. Yeah, true.
I think somehow, and again, like I said, the problem is not the scientific community I think the problem is right now the billions and trillions of dollars which are riding on people's sickness and laziness, and so far that there is going to be these companies and corporations who are going to profit on your laziness.
I love that. Yeah.
People are profiting on your laziness, which is what it is. Facebook completely knows people who are depressed. They already can know the pattern and know that you are suicidal. But instead of trying to tell you that, hey, get a walk, go to therapy, they are showing you how much fun your friends are having in Florida, or look at all the amazing food your friends are eating. Because they are not interested in, right? So I'm just saying that, that's the fundamental problem, that Facebook can, if it decides to become a good company, it can change behavior. It can show people that, hey, you have used Facebook for too long, we are shutting it off for you. Now you can only do meditation.
But it was,
for example.
It was the principle of Kerberg when he started the company. That was the main principle on the side of making money. But but to get there, don't you think that we need to teach people how to go to meditation? Turn off. We always say turn off your phone at 8. And I have a friend that works at Facebook, Instagram, and I told her, turn your phone at 8. Your life is going to change. But then if we ask her or others to meditate, they need to know how to meditate. So they have to go back to Facebook to check, how do I meditate?
No, but if you think about Zuckerberg himself, it's well known that he practices meditation. He reads a lot of books. So I think if you look at a lot of these successful performers, and I love Tim Ferriss, who wrote this book, Tools of Titans. It's quite evident, right, that people who are successful, maybe their businesses are doing this, but just to be personally successful, you have to invest in your own self. And each and every CEO, athlete, author, performer, everybody is doing that. So I think while we can look at Facebook, but Zuckerberg, I'm sure, spends his days meditating and detoxifying and eating healthy food, clearly. So
and he has people, he has team that helps him to do that too. He's not doing it just by himself, and that's something.
Yeah.
Some people found themselves lost in the process of optimizing themselves because they don't know where to start. They don't know how to do it.
All I can tell you is that whenever Elon Musk is going to get this whole thing done to Mars, at least the biohacking community will be ready to go there, and the lazy folks will just be left on Earth.
We're going to take the monkey that has the chip with us to play the game with the gamers.
I'm still in Florida. I don't know.
I think a lot of the problem comes down to people just following and not necessarily being a student, right?
Right.
So Jim Rohn talks about motivation. Like everyone talks about motivation nowadays, how important motivation. But if you have a motivated person who's not reading and working on themselves and learning, now you have a motivated idiot running around. I mean, so he makes a joke. True. It's true. Like we have to focus on that, acquiring that self-knowledge of knowing ourselves, so we're actually improving our common sense to being like, okay, maybe this isn't the right thing. Maybe I have these two options and I can make an educated decision instead of just blindly following, right?
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's a big part of distinguishing how to biohack and what biohacks are for what person. And I think there's a misconception with biohacking now when people saying biohacking is but biohacking really is selfish if it's done in the right way, because we're trying to become the person that we're meant to be, that we're created to be, so that we can serve each other's and the community. And we kind of, through a collaborative approach of competing with ourselves and our old selves, we make ourselves better to make our community better and to serve better in our community, right? And to help lead the medical curve along the line of progression. So biohackers are in the front part of the kind of like exponential curve. We're in the front part of that curve of pushing the boundaries of regular medicine, right? Pushing the boundaries of treatment and looking more into the preventative sides of what we can do so that we don't develop type 2 diabetes or other diseases that are taking the world by storm.
But we go by trials and errors in this case. For example, when we were talking about food or medicine, I don't know if you guys saw that, but yesterday I think that the Mayo Clinic was taking the lead of some sort of food that were considered as superfood, but actually some components into those superfood are even more toxic than the superfood bringing the benefit. So there is a controversy there where science can probably readjust.
No, but just to say that, right, I was extremely disappointed when the study came which talked about coconut oil being bad.
Yeah.
And that study, I don't know what basis it was and whoever did it. The reality is that millions of people in India, drink coconut oil, eat coconut oil, apply coconut oil.
The lake on the skin.
Yeah, exactly. Right? So I think so that's what I said, right? So I think the problem is that, science has discredited itself with a lot of these studies, which kind of, when you talk things around coconut oil and things like that, right? I think so the question is that, and when you question science, it is considered that, why are you questioning science? So
yeah, normally we shouldn't question science. Yeah.
And I think the problem is that in this world, which is why I keep going back to common sense, that people believe fake news, like millions of people, right? So the problem is that they are just not willing to exercise their common sense in this.
Yeah.
So this is the same challenge we are facing with health, that, nobody wants to understand and everybody wants to read the most random study and, which comes up with, what is good or bad for you.
True.
And all I can say is that, I'm glad this community is coming together, and, whatever knowledge we have in India, I think it's very important that we combine a lot of these knowledges, right? So I think whatever is happening in the East, in China, traditional Chinese medicine has so much to learn from traditional Indian medicine and all the practices here and what is happening in the West. So I think, it is important that we create our own coalition and, start kind of talking about this together. And if it needs, we can also now do scientific studies and, come up with
the thing. Data. Yeah, that's the thing. I think that the biohacking community needs scientists into it to make sure that we are all one, we're all talking one language and not creating like a split between science and biohackers, but bringing everyone together. We're talking the same language.
We all have the same
preaching.
goal.
Yeah, we all have the same goal. Exactly. That's it. And to make everyone better, better life optimization in general. This is it. 100%. Now we see that everything that biohackers have been preaching before leads to studies and publication, which is great, as long as the publication are done by reliable labs and not paid to be published. I think it's fantastic. And as you said, if we improve and we publish and we back up by science, people will understand, will know better, will learn better. And what we want is more people with more knowledge to go further.
Did you guys ever hear the term Pea Hacking?
Yeah, no, what's that?
So Pea Hacking is basically is an actual science like term. It happens so much that a lot of studies, smaller studies, they curve fit the data to kind of prove the result that they want to go for initially. Who was the one? Yeah. Was it Amy Cuddy or I think it was Amy Cuddy. She had this whole thing and there was big controversy about one of her books, one of her theories. I'm not sure. It was one of those. But there's a whole term called Pea Hack. So what I think may be interesting, again, with the advancements in technology, that we're going to be able to do those studies more so on ourselves with these sensors. I'm not saying that could happen now, but in the future, because
you mean all by biofeedback directly on us?
Eventually, in a way. I mean, there's still like kind of like, I guess the broad stuff, and to your point, Vishal, like you mentioned, like, yeah, you can't self-experiment and everything. Like clearly a cigarette before going to the bathroom, maybe it helps, but it's just overall there's too many side effects. So I think it's got to be like a mix. You know what I mean? Like I think there's definitely some basics and core things, but some of them are individualized. Like going back to the supplements, like a lot of these supplements have on certain people some side effects. So I try to get all my nutrition as much as possible out of the diet. If I
what you said Alex, allow me. What you just said, it's fully backed by science. It's epigenetic. You express your gene in by the food that you integrate to your body.
But then, like, for example, like, my blood tests show that D3 is low, right?
Like everybody.
Even though I live in Florida, which is surprising in the sun. Then I'll go, because of my personal D3 being low, okay, I'm going to take that supplement. And then I'm going to check, okay, I'm not getting any, I'm going to check how I feel. I don't have any bad side effects from D3, and then I'll keep taking D3. But certain things like CBD, for example, right? CBD was, I tried CBD to help me focus. It totally helped me focus, but I personally noticed that it gave me a crash out. It made me really edgy once it wore off. That's a personal thing. I don't think any studies would have showed that.
No, and there actually, most of the studies on CBD are not that great on the effect on brain. It is not the best, and it's still considered by some as a fantastic tool for biohacking, as a new biohack, but I don't. Anyway, drugs and derivative of these have a certain effect on some, and on others can be different. We're all free to experiment ourselves. Now, it brings me to the question of, you said biofeedback may be the solution to help us to feel better. Who's going to make the standard for that?
Ultisun. Not Julie. That's a really good question. I mean, I just to say that, I think it has to be a combination of those things. I think it has to be a combination of biofeedback, science, like true study. The other problem right now is most of the studies are done, big, real studies with real, and a lot of them take time, especially the longevity. It's very hard to test on humans. You know what I'm saying? How much something is going to affect you, because you need hundreds of years to really get data to see if people live longer. So that's another big challenge with especially with the longevity, what we want. So we have to go either to animal studies or bio.
That's the thing. It's not always reproducible. Yeah, sure.
So I feel like it's got to be three things. It's got to be studies, like true studies. It's got to be how you feel, like it has to be
So common sense.
Yeah. I don't care how good something says it is or gives me biofeedback. Like if something's making me feel like crap every day, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna take that supplement, right? And then the third one. So we said that. So the big studies, the biofeedback, and the how it makes you feel. I think there has to be some kind of a balance of those three things to see how something affects you, and you got to decide that the fundamentals, you got to go with the fundamentals that are proven by science, that are conclusive. Like in our app, we call those the core habits. We have like 30 or 50 core habits, and we give those habits a positive pre-correlation, just because the science is so strong. Morning sunlight, walking, hydration.
There is proof. Yeah.
There's conclusive proof. Now you take something as a little bit more, what's the word, obscure, I guess, something less mainstream, like ashwagandha. Maybe it's good for somebody, maybe it's not. I just read a study that ashwagandha.
That one,
I just read that it dulls some kind of receptors. Again, I'm going to write that before the next time live. I'm going to write all these studies. So I'm pulling them out of my, you know what? But I just read there's a lot of benefits. But then I read like it dulls your serotonin receptors. I just read something the other day. Yeah. So that's going to affect different people differently. And you're not going to know unless you have some kind of a tool, some kind of a sensor, some kind of a tool for each of those things. You know what I mean?
So tomorrow we're going to be with chips that are sensors that will monitor our bodies. Yeah. Or we just do, like Vishal said, like common sense. We go like...
that's the problem. So I don't think so biosensor or data is going to help anybody.
No,
the reality is everybody knows they should not be smoking, drinking, doing drugs, having fried food. Everybody knows that. It's not like they don't know. The reality is people lack the motivation and the accountability to do this. So, a lot of people, for example, we do a lot of research with our users. And, when we ask them that when was the last time you did a blood test or you even checked your blood pressure, people don't check their blood pressure for years, So, and that's the reason.
Yeah,
and the point is that the reason they don't want to check is because they don't want to know. A lot of people don't want to do blood tests because they don't want to know.
True.
And these are the same people who directly get a stroke or a heart attack and then realize that all their arteries are blocked and all this is happening. So the reality is that people are currently lacking the motivation to act. There is data and more data available, but they are just simply ignoring the data on this. and they're abusing their bodies. In fact, it is so sad. Now and again, I did the same mistakes as I was young. It was fashionable to not sleep.
Yeah.
It was fashionable to not sleep. Doing overnighters was supposed to be a good thing. It was like, oh, you are not working hard. You don't work late in the night, so you're not working hard, for example. In India, there is a very crazy tradition that if you don't have a belly, it is correlated to you're not doing well in life. So
It's
people
true.
who had bellies were like, oh, you're not doing well.
You're wealthy.
So you're wealthy. So wealth was indicated with your belly, right? So the point really is that, when social norms and, every happy event is celebrated by giving you sweets and cakes and chocolate.
Right.
So the problem is that we are living in the world where, we don't want to know all of it. This is why awareness, when I started with the point of awareness, once somebody is aware, then the things start changing. So I think getting people to get aware and then being noticed that right now I'm on Facebook and I know what's happening and why is this ad coming up to me is because, so when people start getting aware, they start making those changes. This is what I have seen.
Can
So
I
it has
ask
to be. Yeah, go, Alex.
I want to ask another controversial. No, but this is a question. I don't have an opinion on this.
Alex, please tell us which pharma company is behind this.
Oh no, this is
That's it.
this is a question. I don't have an opinion. I actually hope you guys can help
I
me.
don't know. We are being controversial by saying all these things. No, it's all jokes. Yeah. We are all friends.
Here's my question. And I don't know what to do about this because I've been thinking about this a lot. How do you guys feel about the 23andMe, the genetic testing?
Oh,
I haven't done it yet.
yeah. It's interesting.
I've consulted
No?
people and they said that it might, I have a little bit of health anxiety, I'll admit it. And maybe I need to meditate more. But I haven't done it yet because they say that for a lot of the things that these tests could test for, there's nothing you could do. So for example, if the test says you're predisposed to, God forbid, Parkinson's, right?
Yeah.
You just know that, and then you live like in that fear the whole time. There's a few of them where you could do something, but for the most of them you can't. And I've
Because
been on the fence myself, so I'm curious what you guys think.
Well, there's two things. First is reproducibility of the results, and second, genotype, phenotype, two things in genetics, okay? Genotype is you're born with it. It's the expression of your genes. You can't change them. Actually, a geneism would change them before you get born and pinpoint some part of your DNA, but that's not the case now. And then you have the phenotype that are the expressions. You can change the expression of certain thing, but you cannot change the deep genetic that you have. So we have three things here in those new tests, and those screening on genetics have been done in science forever. Reproducibility of the results is really the big problem. And then, as you said, Alex, there's many things you can change anything, even if you would try with whatsoever biohack and willing and awareness and whatsoever, it's not going to work.
All right. So you guys...
So I've done my 23andMe almost 5 years back, almost when they launched, so I was among the first few people who did that test. And all I can tell you is that it's like reading a horoscope. The best thing I can tell you. Because while it is telling you that there is it's a possibility, it is also telling you that, hey, we don't know. It's almost like a astrological horoscope which you read on your favorite newspaper or magazine.
So it didn't
I think it is
your perspective at all.
Because it is a horoscope, right? Everybody living in this earth now has a 0.1% chance to get cancer. Everybody living in this world has. There are some, I think interestingly, the only actionable point which I found, it was kind of funny in my case, and then I realized that is actually their biggest use case. So in my case, it was really funny. My father got very excited reading that report because it said that 0.2% of my DNA came from Europe. My dad was like, yeah, I told you that one of our ancestors have come from Europe.
I remember that word.
Yeah, so that was the funny part, but that's when I realized the biggest use case of 23andMe is ancestry. A lot of people right now are not aware of their parents, they are all single parents or, kids who don't know their families.
Right.
So one of the big problems I'm having is every week I get this message from 23andMe that they have located 27 relatives of mine. They have located 35, the third gene relative. And I was like, I don't want more relatives.
And they all want money.
I was saying they're all, soon they're all going to have your money.
So the only mails I get from 23andMe is finding my relatives in the world. And I said, I don't want any more relatives.
No. We have enough with our family already.
Exactly. In India, we have already a huge family. And now 23andMe is finding these people from all over the world who are like second, third, fifth cousins also. Like, it's insane.
Yeah, no. And then 23andMe, when you look at where they started, they had a small sample base to make their statistic out. So if I was taking the test, I think they started like 7 or 8 years ago. If I was taking the test 7 years ago, I would probably have family in South Africa, in Northern Arabia, and whatsoever. But now, if I redo the test, it's going to be more located in Central Europe. And so it's all understand.
I think Jean-Claude Van Damme is definitely related to you. I don't need to say 23andMe also. That's so similar.
That's a good one. Hopefully my brain is not from them, from him. I like thank you for the compliment. I like that guy actually. Was when I was a kid, I was always so fascinated. And you know what? To make a joke about Jean-Claude Van Damme, he was a dancer before going to martial arts. Yeah. Crazy thing. But guys, that I could stay hours with you talking about this. It's awesome.
We need to do part 2 of this. We need to
all right. That, you know what?
And
that's
you can get your controversial questions for us.
It's interesting,
Yeah, no, definitely we're going to do a part 2 because this is so, we haven't even covered all the subject I wanted to cover. So that's a promise. We're going to go on the on the part 2 very soon when we can do it. We have a couple of other things. In conclusion, it's just like, I think that we all agree that biohacking and science goes hand in hand, and it's our role to make this community and the other communities understand, but first of all, to teach everyone how to optimize the body and to optimize the overall humanity. Starts from what you said before, start from here, and then it goes to the body itself. Now we have application, we have tools, biofeedback, we have magazine, and we have you guys that are like so tremendously knowledgeable about what you do and how to implement those things. So as conclusion for words of conclusion, I would just leave it open. My plan was to ask you a specific question. I'm not even going to ask a specific question because there's so much to cover. Vishal, please, your conclusion on this discussion, and for next time when we're going to meet for part 2 and probably part 3, recommendation.
I think my only point to make is that coronavirus is a wake-up call to people in the world, the people individually, families, governments. I think people have to now realize that traditional sick care model is not going to work.
Right.
And people who are having comorbidities, they're sitting down for the virus. And as we know, the mortality was very high with people over here. So it is time that people need to start taking responsibility of their own health. You can't say the government needs to make me healthy, or my company needs to make me healthy, or somebody needs to pay for my medicine. The reality is that if you can just pay for your own food and have nutritious food, and have a better exercise and do mindful, everything, follow mindfulness, there is no reason that you would be falling sick and need the thousands and thousands of dollars to be spent on sickness. So I think just the way when the world was attacked with nuclear bombs, after that incident, the world, created the nuclear deterrent.
Yeah.
Now you are attacked by a virus.
It's true.
So how will the world create deterrence to a virus? And that cannot be by giving more medicine. Right, the deterrence to a virus can only be by strengthening people's immune systems, and that can only be happening by bio-optimization.
Yeah, awareness,
biohacking.
Yeah, beautiful words. That's like Yeah, it's almost religious what you said, in agreement totally. When you do everything, it's back to what you said before, awareness, which I would say it's be responsible for your own health. Thank you so much. Awesome words. Thanks. Beautiful. Thank you. Alex, please.
Yeah, I'm just really glad because, there's a lot of people, depending where you are, but there's a lot of people that are not into this stuff. They don't eat healthy, they don't exercise, they don't. And you see that. And I'm just really glad. I was looked at Vishal, who's, he's on the other side of the world, but a lot of our ideas are very similar. Like the gamification is needed and tracking is needed and accountability is needed. Yeah. And that biohacking and self-development are very, very related. So I'm just, and the big one for me, because longevity is a big one. That's really the one, right?
It's the goal, the ultimate goal. Yeah,
it's the ultimate goal, and I'm really surprised that it's not talked about as much as it is out there. You know what I mean? Like I'm surprised more money is not poured into research for longevity. I mean, we all want to be here as long as possible. I don't care if that sounds selfish, but yeah, that's the goal. I want everybody, and at the end of the life, not just living long, getting old is kind of scary. Like if everything goes well and you avoid accidents and you avoid, bad diseases and whatever else, and then you got to look forward to getting decrepit, losing muscle mass when you're older, and eventually, getting sick and dying. And there needs to be a better way. There really does need to be a better way. And my mission is really for that, to change the way we approach ourselves and our body. And I'm glad there's other people like Vishal, like you, Jean, like Alex, out there that are trying to do that. So I'm really, this opened up my eyes.
Yeah, great words too. Great mission. It should be the mission of everyone in the world to help others and optimize health and make the world better. We live under the pressure of the outside that dictates that you need to have that much protein, that much muscle, that much that physique and that things. Other than that, focus on yourself. Dallas.
I just wanted to say, it's been a great enlightening philosophical conversation. Talking with you guys, I'm very impressed. I hope we can talk again. Hacking, I think it's something important to remember, that hacking starts as almost something like a bad thing. It comes from a bad thing. We hear about all these biohackers that suffer from terrible diseases and were not living healthy lives, and then they discovered biohacking kind of by accident and changed their lives completely, So I think it's kind of something to keep in mind when we're talking about the term biohack. The hacking does have a negative component, but a lot of times the best things come from stuff that is almost negative, right? Like that's almost like the best teacher in life is experiencing things from a dark place, discovering the light. So it transforms it into good, right? Like the hackers that you find online that are caught and everything, eventually they become good hackers and then they do the world good, right? So it's kind of like we see our mission almost like that, discovering the bad things and turning them into good things. So we're so ecstatic to put good information out there for the community.
Great words too, and it comes right back to medicine. Medicine, it's allopathic medicine is fighting good with the bad and vice versa. So the whole principle of life is this: it's normally you can fight fire by fire, or you can fight fire with water if you want. But anyway, at the end of the day, it's true. We have all the same mission. Thank you so much, guys. I want to just go back to each of you guys to thank you personally for being here a lot. So Vishal is on my right here. He's the CEO of a fantastic application, GoKey, that actually brings everything in terms of health, medicine, and biohacking together. And he's a fan of fitness as well. That's for the next episode. We're going to talk about that part. Thank you again. Thank you for being here. And I think it's late for you now, so it's time to go to bed. Otherwise, you're not going to get some serotonin for tomorrow morning.
Exactly.
Alex is the founder of this Your Self application that it's the first biohacking application, and we are so thrilled to learn and to see people using this optimizer tool and to see what's next for it. Alex, you were great. I love the polemics you raised, and hopefully next time you're gonna come with more. So yeah, absolutely, and we'll see What else? But I need the publication about meditation. That, yeah, please, that is important. Yeah, that one I want it, and I'm open to read anything anyway. But I have ADD, so if it's too long, I'm not gonna read it.
I do too.
Thank you for joining. So
Thank you.
We'll be tuned together for next time. Alex, thank you for joining. I know that sometimes it's difficult for you to stay that long, but awesome words as well. Mission is there. Our next mission at the magazine, I think, is Vishal said, it's to maybe find a way to change that hack in something better as a rebrand of the whole concept. That would be awesome. I love this idea. Go on. So
and thanks for being such an amazing host and asking all these questions.
Thank you.
I think it was
Thank you, guys.
thought-provoking. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. So talk soon. This whole video goes on my HGTV. I'll put it there for in a couple of minutes. And I thank you so much. I look forward to speak to you again and have a fantastic day. Thanks the audience as well to be so many today. Yeah, thanks guys. Love you all guys. Thanks for joining. I'll go over other questions if they are, and I'll answer each of you guys after that. Bye guys. Ciao.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.